What up YouTube, Quasi here, and today I want to talk about why I recently switched from Overwatch to Paladins. So first off, I've played a lot of Overwatch. It's one of my favorite games of all time. As you can see here, I've done pretty well, got to Diamond and Ranked a couple times, or the equivalent before they actually had Diamond rank in there. And it's a great game, definitely worth the money, no question about that. Blizzard is the king. They make polished games, they make great content. I love the game, no questions asked. That being said, here are my top 6 reasons for switching from Overwatch to Paladins. Number 1, countering the enemy team through items versus character switching. So if you don't know, in Overwatch, a lot of the way wins and losses are decided is by your team comp. What do I mean by that? If the enemy team has a really crazy Genji that's just dominating your team, you counterpick Winston to counter that Genji to make his job a lot more difficult. And while that's fun for some people, in my experience, at least in Ranked, that leads to a lot of counterpicking and basically swap fests. You have every death, someone swaps to counter the other team, and then the other team, when they die, they swap to counter your swap, and it just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It works okay most of the time, but that got pretty annoying to me. Paladins doesn't have that. The way you counter people is by buying items within a match. So in every match, you earn credits, and these credits allow you to buy stuff like anti-shield, or less direct damage, or less AoE damage, depending on what's on the other team. So I find that a much better system than swapping characters constantly. Of course, people might have different opinions, but that's the way I see it. Number 2 is the higher TTK, or higher time to kill, in Paladins. So in Overwatch, a lot of times I run into situations, because I play characters like Tracer that hit hard, they move fast, but they're pretty squishy. You get hit by random stuff that people weren't even aiming at you, for example Hanzo arrows, that hit you out of nowhere and kill you. While yes, you can avoid a lot of that by smart positioning, predicting people, that kind of thing, that doesn't stop it from being really frustrating a lot of the time. Paladins is not like that. The characters all have higher HP pools. If you get out of combat for a few seconds, you start regenning health. There's a lot of things you can do to keep from dying. In Paladins, I feel like 99% of the time when I die, it's because I made a mistake. In Overwatch, that's true in a broader sense, but a lot of the time I also feel like I die just because I got unlucky. Someone hit me from somewhere. I got stuck in an ult from out of nowhere, that kind of thing. Number 3 is the loadout system. So this is one of the things I absolutely love about Paladins, and that's the loadout or the card system. If you don't know, Paladins allows you to build characters or customize characters a little differently depending on what you want to specialize in. For example, if you're playing Torvald, one of the tank characters, you can focus on his shield or his bubble, which bubbles your teammates, and make that a lot stronger. Or you can build a deck that focuses more on his regen ability or his personal shielding. That's pretty awesome to me. In Overwatch, every Genji is always the same, no matter what. I'm kind of picking on Genji here, but the same for any character. Every Hanzo is the same. In Paladins, you can have 2 Victors that play completely differently. Victor is like the soldier of Paladins, basically, depending on how you build them. If you focus on your grenade, or if you focus on your dash, things like that. It adds some more character depth, some more customization, and it lets you differentiate yourself from someone else. My Victor is not going to be the same as someone else's Victor, my Shaolin is not going to be the same as someone else's, etc., etc. Number 4 is the symmetrical maps in Paladins. So aside from the payload game mode, pretty much all the maps in Paladins are symmetrical, meaning that it's the same distance for both teams to get to the objective. There's nothing crazy about one side of the map that puts one team at an advantage or disadvantage. It's quote-unquote fair, balanced. Overwatch, on the other hand, specifically the 2CP or the double capture point game mode, has asymmetrical maps, which means that Blizzard has specifically made it a lot more difficult for attackers to capture than for defenders to defend. You have to build your strats and your team comp and all that all around that. And to me, it feels like you're banging your head against the wall, hoping for the enemy team to make a mistake, hoping to break through. At least in comp anyways, or ranked matches, competitive. You're just trying the same thing over and over and over and hoping this one time you can get a pick and get through that choke and finally make it through, that the enemy doesn't run back to point in time. And yeah, that's not something I'm particularly fond of. If you just check the Overwatch forums on that, you'll see a lot of hate for 2CP. Maybe there's people out there that like it, but that's personally not my playstyle. Number 5 is ranked picks and bans. So in Overwatch, it is kind of a blind pick, but you can't specifically ban characters from the game, ban heroes from the match, which means that sometimes you end up with a lot of mirror matches. I know tons of Overwatch players have experienced the Widow versus Widow fighting matches where neither one will stop. They're basically off on their own doing nothing for the team, but they're trying to prove that they're better than the other one, so it goes on forever. That's what I'm talking about. In Paladins, on the other hand, your team gets the chance to ban a couple heroes on the other team. So if you know that they play a really good Drogos or a really good Torvald or whatever, you can ban that character. There's also no mirror matches, so you're not going to get stuck with the Widow versus Widow equivalent. It helps keep the matches fresh, I feel like, and it helps counter the meta a little bit. Then again, a counterpoint to that is that it basically has its own meta. For example, right now I think Drogos is almost always banned, so doesn't always work exactly like that, but I do think it provides a little bit more flexibility, a little more dynamic matchups than Overwatch does. And finally, number 6 is getting to the combat. So this really depends on the map in a lot of cases, but Overwatch feels a little bit slower paced to me as far as getting to the action, especially on the new maps, like was it New Horizon Dawn, or I can't even think of the name right now. It's a huge map, huge, and it takes forever to get to the point. So what that means is when the defending team, who has a long walk back to spawn, if they die early on in the game, they basically lost that point immediately because they've got such a long walk. That also ends up changing the meta a little bit around those maps by forcing more survivable team comps, which some people would say is a good thing, getting some variety in gameplay through the maps, but that walking and waiting and running to get to combat is really annoying for me. And then if you get picked off early by a flanker or whatever, now you're sitting waiting to respawn and running back again, and that's not fun. Paladins has mounts that let you move across the map pretty quickly, so you can get right back to the action. You're on the capture point, you're in the action, you're not waiting around. Anyways, that's it. Those are my top 6 reasons for switching from Overwatch to Paladins. There will be more Paladins content in the future, so if that's something you're interested in, subscribe, hit me with a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. Peace.